From emerging transportation technology to automation in manufacturing, industrial software leader Siemens is on the front lines of the evolution of work. In the first of our two innovation spotlights in today's program, CNBC's Brian Sullivan is standing by now with the CEO of Siemens USA, Barbara Humpton. Brian, it's yours.
All right, Tyler, thank you very much. Barbara, welcome. Great to have you on. Before we get into 5G and innovation, some of the cool stuff that you guys are doing at Siemens, talk to us about this idea. You heard Diane just wrap up that last segment saying she's bullish on America. We're going to come out of this. We can kind of see the finish line. It's not here yet. You've got this huge platform, 170 billion, I think it is, in sales. Do you think the next few years could be very good ones for the United States?
Well, Brian, I think the next few years are going to be incredibly exciting. What we've seen over the last 6 months is people really accelerating their digital transformation. And what that gives us the opportunity to do is seize the moment, envision a future with new tools. The investments we'll be making in the next few months as Congress decides on stimulus and as business leaders step forward and reinvent their businesses are going to set the tone for, I think what I heard on CNBC this morning is another roaring 20s.
You might have heard that this morning, Barbara. I hope you're quoting me back to me, which I certainly appreciate that. God, this is going to be a very good interview. You walk around D.C. or New York or anywhere in the world, to be honest with you, and if you're an artist, you might look at a building and say, that building speaks to me. Well, actually, you're helping buildings actually speak to us. I saw some amazing video, basically, buildings adjusting their own temperature to save energy, fighting climate change. None of that possible without super fast data transfer, I would imagine.
How cool is this? Yes. I mean, we've been talking about smart cities for a while. You think about the technologies that enabled this last decade in which we connected consumers. And this next decade is going to be about really connecting our infrastructure and industries, right? So it's the low latency, that immediate response that we can get with these new 5G networks, coupled with the incredibly broad bandwidth that is going to make it possible for us to share the data that's being produced by everything around us.
So where do we stand then right now in order to get all this stuff done, and where do we need to be?
Well, innovators everywhere are already hard at work. I'll give you some examples from inside our innovation centers. One, think about an industrial router using 5G capacity. What could that do to transform what goes on a factory floor? Well, it turns out what we're discovering is that we can now elevate automation one more step. And we're using this crazy term, autonomous automation. Robots are taking these repetitive tasks off of our hands, and they're allowing humans to be freed up to do more creative things. Well, what if instead of using those humans to program and reprogram computers, robots could actually be learning on the job. They can be cobots with people on the factory floor, so that every industrial revolution up until now has led us to mass production, greater and greater efficiency. But this next industrial revolution 4.0 that you heard Diane talking about, this one is about mass customization, allowing industry to produce just what we need when we need it. Only possible if we can have this instantaneous reprogramming of the tools of manufacturing.
You got me thinking about Star Wars, Barbara, because there's scenes in the movie where it's like there's a robot bossing around other robots. I mean, is that what it's going to be like? Where do we stand? And where does that human being still fit into the scheme?
Yeah. Well, from the time a human first picked up a rock and used it as a tool, tools have elevated the role of humans. And this is no different. What we're actually seeing is expanding what's humanly possible. Yeah, we're working with robots to handle some things that, frankly, they can handle better. But that frees up us to do the things that we do so well. And I encourage everyone to read the AI Superpowers book by Kai-Fu Lee and discover the real purpose, the role of humans in all of this is doing those things we do well, loving and caring, inventing, creating. So this is actually a really optimistic view of the future, aided by technology.
It is. And by the way, because of the pandemic and the lockdowns, loss of tax revenue, we know cities, especially New York City, they're going to be struggling. Budgets are going to be tight. Siemens sells a lot of stuff to the local governments, state governments as well. How much is it critical to be as sort of svelte and sort of nimble as possible using software, using automation, because otherwise the cities can't afford it?
Well, there are a couple of things that we can do to really help cities respond in this moment. One is for everything that we will invest, right? Every dollar of stimulus that will come back into our economies, we really need to make sure that we're spending in a way that is more sustainable, more focused on the future we're trying to create. And this is one of the really powerful things about 5G as well. It's a much lower power consumer. So the work we do can actually help us on our agenda for future sustainability as much as it responds to the real needs of the moment. Now, I truly believe this is a moment when business, private investors, and government will need to work together. If there's any way that we can bring private money to the table as well, I think what we're going to discover is everything we invest now is going to pay back in multiples. We've seen that before in the analysis of infrastructure. So, and this is where 5G is going to be so important for us. If we're rebuilding a more electrified transportation network, for instance, then we're going to need the technologies made possible by 5G in order to make those operate efficiently. And then as we move forward to the not too distant future, we'll have autonomous driving as well. Again, all you need to do is go to a T-Mobile Innovation Center to see the difference between 4G and 5G and that ability to communicate instantaneously across what I call the Internet of really big things.
Yeah, and that is big buildings, big machines, energy, automation, transportation. It's all going to be connected someday, Barbara. Where are we in the historical, when we look back on this period in time, we'll say, oh, we were really advanced or we had a ways to go. Where are we right now in that massive transformation onto sort of a single grid, if you will?
Yeah, we are still at the bottom of the S. Right? In some industries, we've taken off and you can see people have gone from capturing data, using that data in order to provide better services, and in some cases, even then ultimately changing their business models. But not all markets have done that yet. And so when you look across infrastructure, construction, what you'll find is there is tremendous opportunity still ahead of us. Now, the experimentation with 5G is just beginning. We've just begun experimenting with a private 5G network in our own operations, working at our automotive development center in Nuremberg. So we could see the power that the new communications technology will bring to the technologies that we bring into the ecosystem. So early days yet, and so exciting that we're about to see the explosion of innovation along these lines.
Yeah, there's very rare periods of time, I think, Barbara, in history where you create entirely new economies. I mean, we were lucky enough to sort of watch the birth of the internet, right? It became the economy, software, its own economy in a way. Is 5G in many ways the creation of an entirely new American and global economy?
I do believe it's going to enable things we can't even dream of as we sit here today, Brian. There are opportunities here for innovation all along the edge. You'll hear people talking about the edge. What is that? It's, when you think about the devices we're using every day, putting the smarts into those devices, using these new networking capabilities so that they can work amongst themselves, this is incredibly powerful. If you visited the Consumer Electronics Show, you've seen examples of what this enables, everything from the toothbrush you never knew needed to be this smart, all the way to those cars that are going to drive themselves so we can rest, especially you when you're getting up early for the worldwide exchange.
Yeah, very nice, Barbara. I really appreciate that. I mean, and I also, by the way, look forward to seeing you and John Fort and everybody actually at CES in person again. That will indeed happen. As we wrap it up, Barbara, give us some of the cool stuff that Siemens is working on behind the scenes. I mean, are we going to have 800-mile-an-hour trains? What are some of the coolest things that you guys are working on? You've developed so many already cool technologies. What's next?
Okay, well, just let me give you the highlights. I think that we can look forward to high-speed rail in the US. We see private investment teams putting together packages now. That's coming, and I can't wait. Second, in buildings, healthy buildings, we've got technologies that are helping us open buildings back up, and because COVID isn't the last of the threats we'll be facing on a health front, and so we need to be ready for that. And in manufacturing, as I say, we are now right on the verge of this digital transformation, and we're seeing companies everywhere implementing a new digital enterprise that's going to give us much more control over the products that we build for ourselves.
We'll wrap it up there. And by the way, speaking of COVID, also a shout out to you and all of your team globally in the United States, around the world, because you have prepared a lot of automation and software and everything that has helped us fight this scourge. And a big shout out to you and your team, Barbara Humpton. We really appreciate all the work that you guys are doing on this, because it's a human fight. This is about humanity. It's not about countries, nations. It's about humanity.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, Barbara Humpton, Siemens USA CEO. And Tyler, here's another reason to like Barbara Humpton is that, Wake Forest, ACC, and no doubt hiring a lot of hokey engineers up there in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. Just a quick shout out, Mr. Cavalier.
Yes, indeed. And we play the Hokies this weekend at Lane Stadium. We'll get a little wager on it later this week. Brian, thank you. I don't know, man.